So what is the vice president's office saying about this very serious allegation?
Well, right now the vice president's office says that they don't comment on internal deliberations. But as you know, Suzanne, there have been plenty of allegations that the White House has downplayed the potential effects of global warming. This time, as you said it, the charge is against the vice president's office.
With a former EPA official by her side, Democratic Senator Barbara Boxer accused the White House of censoring congressional testimony on the dangers of global warming and pointed directly at Vice President Dick Cheney's office.
We now know that this censorship was not haphazard. It was part of a master plan.
Former EPA Deputy Administrator Jason Burnett says last year the vice president's office pushed him to delete portions of testimony detailing the potential health impacts of climate change prepared for Dr. Julie Gerberding, the director of Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. In a press conference, Burnett refused to name anyone in the vice president's office and provided few details. But in a letter to Senator Boxer, Burnett says he was asked to remove, quote, any discussion of the human health consequences of climate change. He said he wouldn't do it.
I wanted to make sure that the testimony was fundamentally accurate, and when I concluded that it was, I declined to make any edits or suggest that CDC do so.
But sections of testimony were removed, and the White House acknowledged changes were made because it questioned the science behind some assertions. White House spokesperson Tony Fratto says more than one office raised concerns over accuracy. For her part, Dr. Gerberding has defended her testimony.
No one from the department, the White House, or any place else in government has ever put one word in my mouth or taken one word out.
Now, Burnett has given about $100,000 to Democratic campaigns in recent years, this according to a group that tracks campaign donations. But when pressed today, Burnett says and denies that this is politically motivated. Suzanne.
Okay, thank you, Kate. Joining us now, Dr. Julie Gerberding, head of the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. It was her testimony that the vice president's office is accused of deleting. I want to give you an opportunity, obviously, to respond. We heard Kate's piece. There are serious charges. Were you involved? Did you have any role in having those 6 pages of the 14 pages of testimony, your testimony, deleted?
You know, I actually wasn't aware that there had been any edits to my testimony until I got to the hearing. But I can tell you that I did the very best I could to answer the senator's questions honestly and openly, and I take every chance I have to try to highlight the important potential complications of climate change on human health. So that was my goal at the hearing, and I hope I was successful.
If it's true that the vice president's office was involved in making those deletions, do you agree with those decisions, with the case that they're making, that somehow they didn't agree with the science, so that was legitimate?
Well, we'd have to look and see exactly what their comments were. I know that the chief of the Office of Science and Technology has already commented that there were a couple of scientific technical points that were a concern, but I haven't traced back for the individual comments, and I really don't want to speculate on who did the editing and when they did it.
Sure. And Doctor, let's turn to the nationwide salmonella outbreak. It has sickened some 900 people. Tomatoes were the initial suspect. Now that we're hearing other salsa ingredients like cilantro, peppers, we're talking about 3 months now that they've been investigating. You've been investigating, trying to find out the bottom of this. Why has it taken so long?
You know, we're as frustrated as everyone, but this is an incredibly complicated investigation. Part of the problem is that we have to rely on people's ability to recall what they ate days or weeks before we are able to talk to them. And you know, it's kind of easy to remember if you had a hamburger. So when we deal with a hamburger outbreak, we can often get to the bottom of those very quickly. And plus, there's usually frozen hamburger in the freezer that we can test. But when you're dealing with fresh produce and the exposure occurred days ago, you know, it's really hard to think of every food item that you ate, and sometimes these products are in foods that you don't actually recall. They're ingredients and other things. So, for example, with the salsa, which has come up as an important potential exposure risk in some of the people that we've talked to, you know, we know that the foods of interest in the salsa right now look like they're tomato and cilantros and a couple of the peppers that are commonly associated. But there are a whole lot of other things that are in many salsas. So we've got to get all the recipes. We've got to look at everything from the powder in the recipe to the foods themselves, and that just takes a lot of time.
Do you have any sense of how much time we're talking about here?
I wish I knew the answer to that. I do know also that the trace back of food from the restaurant has to go, how is is the food produced, how is the food stored, and then all the way back to the farm. And in fact, for the 3 foods that we have on our list as the foods of interest right now, so often they're grown on the same farm. So we may never be able to tease out what exactly is the ultimate cause.
I want you to take a listen to a concern. This is a former Secretary of Health and Human Services, Tommy Thompson, who talked about the risk here when we take a look at the food supply. Let's take a real quick listen.
I, for the life of me, cannot understand why the terrorists have not, attacked our food supply, because it is so easy to do.
He says it's easy to do. That can't be comforting to many of us who are listening to that. And, kind of a warning, I guess, and to the terrorists here that this is a real vulnerability in our country. Do you agree with that this is a vulnerable area?
Well, I think it's important to recognize that we actually have a very safe food supply overall. And while this is a difficult challenge, it doesn't detract from the fact that the United States does have one of the safest food supplies in the world, thanks to the FDA and the USDA and many other people at the state and local level. But we've also acknowledged that food is an inconvenient vehicle for deliberately contaminating people, and it certainly is in our sphere of interest as we look at preparedness issues. So we are concerned, and we take it very seriously.
Doctor, thank you so much for joining us here on the Situation Room.
Thank you.